So let us move on to the next speaker. Aki Toyoyama-san.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well. So Toyoyama-san has a PhD from Kansai University. She has very interesting research focus on the arts of colonial South and Southeast Asia, publications as well. And her present presentation here is on Hindu mythology on Japanese Majolica tiles. It's a very interesting study, as I can see from the abstract. Over to Toyoyama-san.
Okay, thank you very much. So first of all, I'd like to thank organizer for your invitation of my presentation. So I'd like to share my slides. Can you see my slide now?
Yes.
Okay, so I'd like to start my presentation. Okay, so my title of presentation is Hindu Mythology on Japanese Majolica tiles. And this presentation discusses tile consumption in interwar India, in which Japanese color glazed tiles with embossed surfaces. So you can now have idea with my slides, just briefly. This is so-called Majolica tiles. Particularly, this was particularly gained wide popularity among the local middle class in colonial India. The colonial urbanization in India under British rule promoted the spread of mass-produced tiles, mainly from Britain, of course, throughout the 19th century. However, British tiles were replaced by Japanese tiles in the Indian market by the late 1920s for several reasons, such as a sharp decrease of tile imports from Europe during and after the First World War, price competition with newly growing Japanese tiles, and also the boycott of British goods as part of the nationalist movement in India. Preceding studies on the tile trade of Imperial Japan have mainly focused on Taiwan, Singapore, and other East and Southeast Asian regions under Japanese rule or its self-sufficient economic bloc only. The actual conditions of the India and Japan tile trade have rarely been considered, although the trade statistics shows that British India has been the largest export market for the Japanese tile industry throughout the 1930s. So this presentation thus first outlines the history of the modern Japanese tile industry and its advance into the colonial Indian market. Secondly, this presentation examines changing patterns of using tiles in colonial India and its experience. And then I'd like to show a connected history of aestheticism, sanitation, and nationalism in modernizing Asia, reflected in tile consumption through iconographical analysis of Japanese Majolica tiles for the Indian market. So I'd like to begin with the tile industry, history of tile industry in Japan. It can be traced back to the late 19th century. Western impact resulted in overthrowing of the Tokugawa shogunate rule in 1867 and the new Meiji government of the emperor system aimed at a modern state, taking Western countries as its model. In the capital city Tokyo and other major cities, government offices, banks, universities, and residential mansions for the local elite in Japan were constructed in eclectic styles combining Western and Japanese architecture, in which imported tiles, mainly from Britain, were used for fireplaces, wall decoration, and floor pavement. So now I showed one example from Nagasaki. It was the British Merchant House, and now you can see the fireplaces which was decorated with printed tiles on floor. So, and after that, the Japanese government invited foreign experts, including German engineer Gottfried Wagner, to national institutions such as Tokyo Higher Technical School, which is now the Tokyo Institute of Technology, for nurturing the local talent and launching the domestic tile industry in Japan. Jiro Maro Murase and Keizo Nose were the very important figure who were both graduates from the ceramic department in this school. And they simultaneously determined the means to produce solid ceramic tiles around the early 20th century in improving processes of the respective pottery workshops of their family business. Murase and Nose studied dust pressing and color glazing methods for British prototypes, including Minton products. And their success encouraged other Japanese pottery workshops to enter the tile industry. So now I think I should explain about what is Majolica tiles. So Majolica means the trade name of zinc-based color glazes, which was firstly launched by Minton in the Great Exhibition in 1851. And this Majolica was inspired by Renaissance Majolica pottery, which I show on the bottom image. And the Majolica soon after became to be known as the name of the embossed tiles with zinc-based color glaze. So the general term, the Majolica became a general term, not only means the color glazing, but also the embossed tile with zinc-based color glaze as the whole became to be known as Majolica in the whole tile industry. And it's actually influenced to Japanese tile industry. And in Japanese tile industry also, Majolica means this one, the embossed tiles with zinc-based color glazed tiles by the late 19th century. And the further growth of the Japanese tile industry in the early 20th century was brought about by two events. First one was the World War I, and the second one was the Great Kanto earthquake. The First World War stagnated industrial sectors, including tile manufacture in European countries. The situation increased the demand for domestic substitute in Japan and consequently gave an opportunity for growing the manufacturing capacity of the Japanese tile industry. The post-war boom economy in Japan was obstructed by the Great Kanto earthquake that heavily damaged capital city Tokyo and the neighboring regions. The disaster revealed that the Western-style brick structure was actually not suitable for the Japanese geographical conditions because the earthquake was frequently occurred. Therefore, the post-quake reurbanization in Japan promoted the increase of concrete buildings that were quake-proof as well as fireproof, covered with tiles and terracotta. The growing demand for tiles in the post-quake architectural boom accelerated the establishment of new tile manufacturers in Japan. However, the declaration of the reconstruction boom produced excessive supply of tiles by the late 1920s, so that Japanese tile firms began to look at Asian countries, including India, as one of the most promising export marketplaces, in which the suzerain country, such as Britain, had expanded the demand for tiles in the processes of colonial urbanization. This strategy brought prosperity in the Indo-Japan tile trade throughout the 1930s until the outbreak of the Pacific War in 1941. So I'd like to show the trade statistics in 1937, the peak period of the pre-war Japanese tile industry tells that the British India accounted for more than 40% of the total export quantity of Japanese tiles, which shows on the left hand of this slide. In parallel, on the right hand, trade statistics of British India corroborates that Japan reaches 48% of the total import quantity of tile, overwhelming other countries such as Italy, the United Kingdom, and Belgium. So now, let us focus on tile consumption in colonial India. Traditionally, ceramics for architectural decoration have come down in Islamic as well as Portuguese heritage, while they have never become the mainstream building materials in pre-colonial South Asia. When British colonial administration began in earnest in the late 18th century, and Western-style architectural designs were transplanted to its major strongholds, including Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras, to declare Britain's suzerainty over India. The colonizers' politics of aestheticism displayed in new cityscapes inspired the local upper class, such as Maharajas and the landlords, and as well as merchants, to construct palaces, residential mansions, and temples following European architectural trends. Those structures were furnished with a variety of imported goods, including floor and wall tiles, mainly from Britain. Indian elites considered imported tiles as a kind of status symbol that showed builders' power and wealth rather than practicality of the material, such as protection or cleanliness. One of such examples is Sri Sri Sheetalnath Temple in Calcutta, commissioned by a Jain merchant, Rai Badridas Bahadur Mukim, who was appointed as court jeweler to the Viceroy of British India. So this temple was constructed in 1867. The whole complex of this temple is fully embellished with a variety of imported items, such as Belgian mosaic glass, Chinese blue and white porcelains, and decorative tiles from Victorian Britain. A series of epidemics through the late 19th and early 20th centuries was a watershed of the diffusion of tiles in India. So this crisis pressed British administration for drastic reforms of a poor sanitary environment caused by colonial urbanization. The colonial government established the improvement trusts under local government bodies to improve public health conditions. In this redevelopment process, the colonial government promoted the use of tiles as sanitary architectural materials in public as well as private buildings. In addition, the newly emerging middle class in major Indian cities began to enjoy luxurious material culture in their lifestyles after the upper class model, including tile decoration in their houses, shops, and religious spaces. Such new patterns of cultural consumption in colonial India enormously pushed up the demand for decorative tiles among the local elite middle class, as well as elite class, for practical as well as symbolic purposes that laid the groundwork for the Japanese tile industry to go into the Indian market. When Japanese tile manufacturers advanced to the Indian market in earnest in the 1920s, their main export products were copies of British decorative tiles in more affordable prices. For example, a popular floral design of two roses centered on a petal-shaped square produced by several Japanese manufacturers were originally launched by the British firm H&R Johnson. The pre-war catalog of Japanese tile manufacturer, for example, I show here on the screen, the original tiles found in, this kind of the designs were actually shared with several Japanese firms, including Danto, which I show a catalog here, and other the Japanese firms such as Fujimiyaki, Saji Tile Works, and Hirosho. All of those tile firms have actually same design of this floral tile patterns tiles, which is very interesting point, I think. So, but actually they copied British designs, but their color scheme, when we look at color schemes, they imitated the design, but they put the much thicker, brighter color than the original British tiles. So this is because the Japanese market research found that the Indian customers preferred much brighter one than the thicker color to decorate their spaces. So this tiles, this actual green based tiles can be found in several surviving heritage in India. I'd like to show one example here. So this kind of Japanese tiles have been found at merchant house called the Piramal Haveli in the Shekhawati region in Rajasthan, northern Rajasthan. This Haveli was built in 1928 by a Marwari businessman, Piramalu Chaturbuji Makaria. in this mansion, the tiles embellishing the galleries attached to the facades have partly come off the walls, actually. That it is unfortunate. But it's actually come to find a very interesting point. From the wall, you can see the trademark on the back of tiles and the stamp on the ground plaster. Now you can see the showing the capital letters DK, and which as abbreviated name of Danto, or Japanese tile form name, and made in Japan is depicted on the background of the walls, which is stamped on the plaster. So this kind of survivor example shows how the upper middle class or elite class preferred the tile decoration, not only for the practical purposes, but also to how to be looked at their houses by the others. So after the successful entry into the Indian market by selling copies of British styles, Japanese manufacturers attempted to develop new original designs to meet Indian taste for further expansion of Japanese products. So one of the major new designs was Hindu mythological subject. And this is quite noticeable because the British tiles and other European tiles have never depicted Hindu or maybe Indian subjects in their product. So this was quite original to the pre-war Japanese tile industry. So the point is who gave this information. This is a very important point, I think. So the Indian merchants in Japan actually acted as intermediaries in the Indo-Japan tile trade. Their role was quite crucial in giving information on local trends in colonial India. And sometimes those merchants actually brought Indian popular printed images directly to Japanese tile farms as design samples in Japan. So on those Indian merchants' advice, Japanese tile companies different tile companies simultaneously began to produce embossed color glazed tiles, or maybe we can say now Majolica tiles, that depict Hindu subject, mostly referring to actual printed images from India. One of the interesting case study can be found from the Hirosho Potteries archive. Takashi Hanya, who was the former president of Hirosho Potteries, witnessed that his company had dealings with a Gujarati commission agent, M.D. Takar, who was based in Osaka, and the printed images brought by Takar became the basis of metal molds for Majolica tile panels. So now you can see the material which was used for making the Japanese Majolica tiles depicting Hindu mythological subjects. This is metal mold, actually, which was kept by Hanya, and now it's donated to the Japanese Museum of Tiles. So these metal molds were privately kept by Hanya, and you can see this depicts for example, Ganesha, Lakshmi, Vishnu with attendants, and Krishna, and the Dattatreya, which is actually the actual tile example cannot be found, but still the metal molds you can see the Dattatreya is depicted on the two sets of panels. So actually those tiles, the printed Hindu images on which Japanese Majolica tiles are based are reproductions of paintings by popular painters in colonial India. For example, Raja Ravi Varma and Vasudeva H. Pandya is the quite major inspiration for Japanese tile manufacturers. You can see now the Ravi Varma's Saraswati is related into the tile design and by such tile works. And also the Krishna and the Gopi, the celebrating Holi, the image by Pandya is translated into the Japanese tile panel on 12 tile sets. You can see now on the screen. So actually those certain images of particularly popular that like Ravi Varma and Pandya, but was possibly brought by different Indian merchants to different tile manufacturers. And the print media in reproduction paintings, as well as package labels and advertisement calendars, also brought to Japanese tile forms by Indian merchants. But actually, these printed images were not surviving in Japanese in any Japanese forms. But it is quite speculative that we can speculate that at least the Japanese tile forms quite nicely depicts Hindu images, even though they don't know or they don't have any specific idea on Hinduism actually. So the Japanese tile industry actively developed those new designs based on local taste on Hinduism. But actually, so Japanese tile manufacturers were firstly attempted to Hindu mythological images rather than European tile forms did not do that. But actually, Japanese industry itself quite actively have depicted Japanese Hindu images, not only on tile forms, but also in the, for example, match industry and also the pottery industry, which made small pottery figurines, like I show here. So this was actually preceding to the tile industry. Those pottery figurines were actually quite like actively exported to Indian market around the First World era, and after that it was just decreased. And during the interwar period, those pottery figurines have rarely been produced in Japan anymore. And the match labels also were the quite important trade products from Japan to India, and their labels frequently depicts Indian subject, as like you can see here. So this kind of, how to say, the information was also made by the Indian merchant in Japan. And for example, in match labels, mostly the industry of match in the producers were located in Kobe and Osaka. So the Kobe, in Kobe and Osaka, there are many Indian merchants who resided in around that time. And the Japanese match manufacturers and these pottery manufacturers, as well as tile manufacturers, gained information on local trend from intermediary Indian merchants. Then, so this kind of network of people, information, and the goods in the Japanese industry, this connection between Japan and Indian merchant had created this kind of new the actual consumption culture, I think. So the development of Hindu themes tile panels by Japanese tile companies was underlain by the politicization of consumption culture and the Hindu visual images with the rise of nationalism in late colonial India. As a Japanese pottery agent, Takeguro Asai reported in 1933, then he reported as like that Indians were not pro-Japanese, yet Japanese ceramic products substituted for British as well as Indian goods in practicing Swadeshi. Thus, clearly realizing the great business opportunities associated with Indian nationalism, Japanese tile companies strategically developed Hindu-themed Majolica tiles in collaboration with Japan-based Indian merchants. Tiles were particularly also associated with sanitary improvement to symbolize progress of a modern nation as well. The British colonial government intervened in the great success of the Japanese tile industry in interwar India by making an amendment of the customs tariff in 1933 to repulse Japanese tiles from the Indian market. However, the high demand for Japanese tiles among Indian people was retained as suggested in the foreign trade statistics in this presentation in relation to the development of middle-class consumption culture and the rise of consumer nationalism until the outbreak of the Pacific War in 1941. The embargo on Japanese tiles generated the development of the Indian domestic tile industry that resulted in that the post-independence India became one of the largest countries of tile production in the world, not only as subcontract factories out of the world-famous tile farms, but also as a large consumer market on its own. India's modern tile culture was prepared in the colonial period through interaction with the tile industry of Imperial Japan. I'd like to stop my presentation here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Toyoyama-san. Any questions? Can we have a couple of questions?
Are these commercial tiles or are they collectible items or are they?
Sorry, it's very hard to hear.
Can we get the mic?
Are these tiles for commercial purpose or are they collectible items or are they decorative pieces of the mantelpiece? What was the purpose of these tiles?
So purpose of this tile?
Indian religious motifs were not allowed to be put on the floor. So what was the purpose of these tiles?
Actually, not. There's the Hindu, especially Hindu mythological subjects, was not paved on floor. It is decorated on walls. Yeah. Yeah. So the basically floor pavement. It is not for floor pavement, but basically it is for wall decoration. So it's of course for the decorative purposes, but also it was like how to say it's trimmed with the floral motifs as well. So it was kind of how to say not just decorative, but also like basically it's decorated and it was actually embellished in the Hindu merchant houses and also as well as it was used in temples as well. Some temples, for example, the Marwari temples in Shekhawati region, they sometimes decorate these Hindu mythological subjects on walls, and also for example, in Southeast Asia, you can see Hindu temples in Singapore or Malaysia or Myanmar. You can see actually the tiles were decorated as kind of the quite sacred image as well. So it actually depends on how the consumer used actually just as decoration, or maybe it was recognized as some sacred images. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Please. Then you'll get the mic. You can just use the mic.
The Majolica tiles, when you say, is it because the word has come from mosaic tiles or it is Majolica, how the word has come out as a Majolica tile?
Yeah, actually, Majolica means the Suda sensei is very familiar with this word, I think. So Majolica means actually comes from the Renaissance pottery, the European pottery. So Majolica means a kind of regional name of the Spanish, tiles. So Majolica is actually the name of the Spanish region.
It's a region. It's the city of Mallorca. It's a
Mallorca.
Mediterranean city.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for supplemental comments.
I have a question regarding your concept of nationalism. You are talking about Indian nationalism and Japanese embargo, but why don't you see that as a idea of material culture consumption and the market? Because that's where I think it was already a developed market, right? So if the embargo is there, automatically the Indian tiles would get in. So how do you interlink in just because you think that was the time of Swadeshi, or you want to see that the way even the Japanese mills were competing with Bombay mills, which I'm going to present tomorrow. Why can't we see Indian mills competing with the competing along with their Japanese tile makers?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. It is a very important point, actually. So I think the cotton industry and the mill industry was actually they're quite competing with each other. But actually, the regarding tiles or pottery industry, the Indian tile industry, I mean, the domestic production was not fully developed during the colonial period, actually. And some of the actually tile companies already established. For example, the Gwalior pottery and the some Gujarati, the pottery company were already established in the colonial period around the 1920s. But actually, when I look at the how to say the letters between Indian firms and Japanese tile companies, they say that the Indian companies try to get the technical instruction from Japanese companies. But actually, Japanese companies refused to do so because they did not want to take the Japanese Indian market down from their own hand. So it was still like not fully developed, and so I think the cotton industry, textile industry, and the pottery industry, the situation is slightly different.
No, they are very much different. But what I'm saying is that capital, it was a game between the capitalist and the manufacturers. So how do you bring that concept of nationalism? That's where my I'm finding it little dicey to use it, because I mean it is not so evident as of this was the symbol of nationalism. That's what she was pushed here. This was like not those subsistence commodities or something which was a must thing, right? This was about home decor or temple decor or something like that. So I was little confused.
Actually, Japanese tile agent says that maybe he just did market research in colonial India, and he found that there is Swadeshi, and we have the big business opportunity in India to sell the Japanese tiles, because Indian tile production was not fully developed. But actually, it was kind of, how to say, like it's not actually fully reflected the actual situation in India. That it was kind of, how to say, include the wish of Japanese tile manufacturers as well. So I cannot say that actual Swadeshi, maybe Indian consumers, or maybe like actually see the Japanese tile products as Swadeshi one, but like as a political ambition of imperialism from Japanese perspective, they wanted to make it into this context, I think. So
I mean, possibly just because they want to add this profitability was something which I would like to see rather than just looking at one aspect. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have to conclude the session.
I just wanted to comment one thing. What Chaya was saying, that how Swadeshi got into it. I think it must have been that because that time, colonial time, Swadeshi was a boom, and the Indian images kind of encouraged the users to use Indian image styles. And so it kind of got linked with Swadeshi.
Yeah, I would also agree with that. I think it was just that it was it was taking on the British industry with the local icons. The iconography was perfect.
Local everything. And so it was kind of Swadeshi.
Yeah.
Also that.
No, it was a smart marketing device.
By Mr. Thakkar.
Technique.
By Mr. Thakkar, perhaps.
Yeah. Mr. Thakkar did that trick. He played the trick. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much. Toyoyama-san, very excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.